I'm making it simple. I'm making it simple. Just to make it simple, I'm going to make it simple for you. Hi everyone, it's Pastor Matt. How you doing? We're here with the Make It Simple podcast out of Great Rock Church. And as promised, we were going to give you a part 2 of toxic masculinity. And as promised, we were going to bring in a female so she can share from her perspective also. I have Carmela Leo alongside. She's been going to Great Rock Church for quite a while now, serves with her sisters there. And as always, I have Isaiah Chenlate here with me also, our men's house overseer and our youth minister. Now, just so you know, the way we've structured this program is no structure at all. Carmela wasn't prepped or prompted at all. She's ready to shoot from the hip. She's not going to hold back. Neither are we, because we want to be as honest and as upright as possible when it comes to this topic. So, in regards to toxic masculinity, just a quick recap of what we discussed last time. We talked about how men are accused of being toxic, and I think Isaiah, I think you said, can we just call it toxic behavior? You know what I mean? And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But men being accused of, if men don't want to like be emotional and soft and cry, they're accused of, not being, a loving person. And I said, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. God made us a little bit more to not be as emotional sometimes. And in regards to other things we discussed about, men, and sometimes we can get bullyish, and we do have toxic behavior. And I think we can all agree, maybe Carmela does or doesn't, that women can be toxic also sometimes. So with that being said, just to start the conversation off, Carmela, can you give us a little bit of your perspective on what you would see as toxic masculinity, and just give us, if you have any background or insight you like to share with the ladies that are out there and the men, that would help.
Yeah, so I think masculinity and femininity in of itself, like in essence, God made it perfect. Like we are supposed to be harmonious with one another. You have the strong masculine and you have the soft feminine. However, because of our fallen, sinful state, I believe that our heart posture is depending on if we are having our hearts renewed and our minds renewed daily with the Word of God. If we're not renewing our minds, more likely than not, we're going to exhibit toxic behavior. So whether you're a male or whether you're a female. And I think the Bible warns us in Proverbs 5 against the toxic female who uses her femininity, her beauty, to be seductive and to, basically rear in the foolish man. And
So you're saying women do that?
yeah, of course. I
Okay.
think because we're all fallen, right?
Yeah.
Man,
Yep.
man and female. So, but I also do think, I think in Second Timothy, um, Paul mentions to Timothy that in the latter times, beware of men. In some translations, in the NLT, I believe it says people, but men who are arrogant, who are self-seeking, boastful, lovers of money, and abusers of people, who have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. From such keep away. So I think that is also an example of how men could be considered, in today's society, toxic.
Yes, I understand. Understand. Let me get right to the beginning, right to the root of the issue. And again, like I said, no one was prepped or prompted, but with the Bible knowledge that you have, going all the way back to the beginning with Adam and Eve, all right? Do you believe, okay? And if you don't, you could say you don't, all right? It's just, I just want to ask you, because this is the crux of the matter to me. Do you believe that even before there was a fall, that Adam was to exercise headship over Eve?
Yeah,
Okay,
because Eve was the helper.
correct. Now that's when it comes right down to it. In churches, and I agree with her. I agree with her 100%. A lot of churches will say that there was no headship or a provider and a protector role and a helper role until after the fall. That's when the toxic masculinity started, because Adam was trying to be the boss now, and the fall started all this, and Eve didn't want to listen. They'll say, and I'll say to that, I'm like, well, what I see in the Bible is God created headship before the fall. So there was always a role for women, and there was always a role for men. So after the fall, yes, it did create these toxic relationships. Battle of the sexes have gone back since the beginning of time. But let me ask you this. And Isaiah, you can chime in too if you want.
Well, I have a question about what you just said.
Yes, yes.
Do you remember, correct me if I'm wrong at any time, but do you remember when Eve was talking to Satan, the serpent?
Yep.
And she said, don't even touch it.
Yeah, now, you don't want my perspective on this.
Well, she said don't even touch it, but there was nowhere.
The lady's going to get mad at me.
There was nowhere in the Bible that said that God told him don't even touch it. He just said don't eat of it.
Yes.
So who must have told her not to touch it?
This is where I think headship comes in.
That's exactly.
All right. So this is my take on the fall, since we're going to start right at the beginning. I believe personally, and you do have to read between the lines a little bit, and I've heard many sermons preached about Adam was blamed for the fall because he didn't protect his wife, right? Have you ever heard said that way before? I don't agree with that. I don't think it's in the Bible. I think what happened from the beginning is this. I think that God designed headship. Like we say, Adam was to provide and protect his wife, and she was to come alongside and help him.
A chain of command.
No, chain of command.
Chain of command.
And I think the Bible backs that up in 1 Corinthians 11. Now, this is what I think happened right from the beginning. It says Eve was deceived, being in the transgression. God told Adam, in the day that you eat of it, you will die. Okay? Why does Eve go to talk to the serpent? Again, was it a shining snake? Was it Satan taking over a snake's body? We don't know. The Hebrew word is nakash. It means the shining one. Some kind of serpent creature with God's creation. We're not 100% sure how that went down, but it's something literally happened. So, with that being said, I think that God told Adam, the day you eat of it, you'll die. I think Adam exercised headship over his wife and said, don't even eat it or touch it. Right?
Like, yeah, the same you would say to somebody you care about.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and I think Eve came out from underneath that headship, and she was deceived by the serpent. And then once she was deceived, Adam told her, don't eat it. Don't even touch it. I think once she was deceived, then Adam had a choice to make. I'm going to love her more and the way she looks and who she is more than I'm going to love God. And that's what he chose. So Adam sinned willfully. So the toxicity starts all the way back from the beginning. I don't necessarily believe because Adam didn't protect his wife. I think he tried, and I think she made her own free choice, but she was more deceived. And then Adam made his choice, being not even deceived. Both are in sin because both violated the word of God, but Adam was held more responsible because it was blatant rebellion as opposed to Eve's deception. So that's going back all the way to the beginning. Now, to answer that, give a little bit of the backdrop of the way I think. If you watch us at home, you might disagree with that because I've heard 99 sermons that say, well, the first sin happened because Adam didn't protect his wife. I don't necessarily agree with that. But from a woman's perspective, do you think you can recognize toxic behavior in a male?
Yes.
Okay. What would you look for? Or what would you recognize as toxic behavior?
Well, I would say demeanor in the tone of his voice, how he speaks to others, how he treats other people.
Okay. All right. Demeanor, tone of his voice. But that's all looking from the outside.
But I think, well, more importantly, what comes out of the mouth is, that's what the Bible says.
Comes from the heart,
yeah. Of the heart, the mouth speaks. So I would say what he says.
Yes.
What's an example of that?
Like he says he's going to make a promise, to, I don't know, to get a job and keep it, but, well, that's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying? Like, an example of that is he makes a promise to you, and he ends up going back on his word by, not fulfilling that promise.
Okay. So, with that being said, and again, you don't have to get personal if you don't want to. Have you ever dated men with that kind of character, or got close to that?
I mean, I think a lot of men are just like that in general. Not even just
Did you hear that?
A lot of men or a lot of people?
a lot of people, sure, but the question is, have you ever, dated a man like that? I don't think I have to date a man like that to,
Yeah.
see a man who is like that,
Okay.
or to have other men around that are like that.
Because a lot of guys can put on a show though for a long
That's
time,
100%.
and they're hard to
I agree.
they're hard to pinpoint until you really get to know them.
But the Spirit of God, though, if you ask for discernment, He'll give it to you.
He will.
100%.
He will. He will.
I can attest to that.
Yep.
Can I ask a question? Because I've heard this a lot. I've heard, oh, I'm praying for God to show me, if this, give me confirmation. I've heard, or the way that He talks to others, but we never know the full context or anything like that. But that's almost like saying I'm just not judging, but like, so is the person looking like great, like that perfect that they're going to? I don't know how to explain it. Like,
Well, I think looks are definitely deceiving. I think you can really tell a content, like the character of somebody if you, have discussions with them. And if
I'm gonna ask some poignant stuff here in a
Yeah.
minute, but go ahead.
Okay.
You
and
gotta
then-
be honest though. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
Honestly, I lost my train of thought.
I'm
But-
sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, ask your
All right. So
question.
let me ask you this: men are often accused of being toxic. Now, I already got my wife, so I'm good. Isaiah's just found one, by the way, if you didn't know that. But men are often accused of being toxic because it's all about looks with them, right? He only cares about looks. Can I ask you? Because from what I see from the pastorate, is most women are like that also.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all, but from a woman's perspective, can you attest to that? That's usually right up on the top of their list also if they're attracted to the person.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're not, I think if women are attracted to somebody, they're more so gonna, go into a relationship with them.
Yep.
But I think some women, they can look past that, and because the content of the man's character is, very good, even though he doesn't, meet their typical type or appearance, they can look past that and learn to love that person. And I think the same for men. They could also do the same, but
I think it's more women will look past it a little bit more than
Yeah.
men.
I
Yeah.
agree.
So is that a toxic trait if men don't look past it as much as women?
Well, I mean, that's a preference. I don't think that's toxic.
Okay. All right.
what I heard is the better looking they are, the more toxic behavior they'll put up
She
with.
didn't say that though.
No, but am I
She
wrong?
didn't say that.
What
Because
do you mean?
so they can be uglier as long as they have a better character. But if the better looking they are, the less of a good character they have to have.
Not necessarily. I think.
But is that true? Like,
no, I don't think so. I think it depends on the man.
so they have to have a good
character.
character no matter how good looking they are.
Right. I think beauty, more importantly, comes from your heart and how you love others.
See, this is good. Again, it's Pastor Matt here.
I
I'm
think
here
you're
with
right, by the way.
in the Make It Simple podcast. We're talking about toxic masculinity, and like I promised, we have a female here to give us her perspective, and it's our job to make her feel as uncomfortable as possible. So I can start to, and you can start to see the mind of what goes on with people that do love Jesus, but also, like Isaiah said, looking for red flags and green flags when it comes to relationships. Okay, now this is all good stuff. So, do you think that women would put up with more toxic character in a man if they are better looking?
I think, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But it
Okay.
also depends on the woman, too. Some women I know who are very strong character, very strong-willed, and they won't put up with none of that.
Or money. The better looking, the more money they have.
Well, but now you're on something different, because we even said men are supposed to be providers and protectors.
So the better the provider, the more toxic they can be. The better looking they are.
Not necessarily, but that's why I
Back to
asked.
their character. That goes back to their character. If they,
To whose character?
to the man's character, if they are wealthy and they, they can provide in a certain manner, if they're lording that over their women, they don't have that great of a character, because
Mm.
what kind of integrity do you have if you're just gonna, flaunt that you have all this money you can provide?
She did say that women might look past the toxic stuff a little more if they're a little better looking and maybe a little bit better providers.
Yes.
Which,
Well, I think biblical women would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much they're gonna put up with, she said it depends. It's whoever. It depends on the man, on the person.
The biggest issue with toxic masculinity was gender roles, I think. I was reading about it a little bit after our podcast, and it was a big toxic masculine trait was expecting women to fall into a certain role, whether it be in the house or out of the house, and men having to fall into a specific role in and out of the house.
Yep. Well, let's ask her. And she's gonna give us a biblical perspective. Thank God. She's here for the ladies that want to think biblically. Do you feel it's oppressive if, let's say, you fell in love with somebody and they said, "Hey, I want you to be a stay-at-home wife and mom"? Do you feel that could be oppressive?
No. For me personally, no.
For you personally, no. But do you feel that with a lot of ladies in the churches that they would feel that might be a little bit oppressive? I'm not saying all of them.
I think it could, depending on, if they truly do love what they do. I think it'll be harder for them to kind of be stripped away from that and to, take the role of a wife and a mother, especially if they're not, mentally preparing themselves in their singleness to be that role.
Yeah.
But I think for the majority, I do work with some Christian women, and they actually would prefer that.
They
to
prefer
be a
that.
stay-at-home wife and mother.
Okay. Because we do believe, and I do believe biblically speaking, that it is the best model. Again, is it for everybody, and can everybody survive doing that? No. But I think that that's the model that we should shoot for as men. This is why I tell people when they're courting and talking and dating, you need to put all this stuff right out on the table. Right? Do you want to work? Do you want to be a stay-at-home mom one day? I would like that as your if we end up getting together, husband and wife. You got to put all this stuff right out on the table, or else why even waste your time? Because that's a huge thing to find out. We've been dating for a year. We're getting engaged, and I'm finding out that you're never gonna ever want to give up your career. Sort of kind of thinking. That's a huge issue. So encouraging people, if you hear these things, this stuff needs to be talked about. You can't hide this stuff. It needs to be put right out on the table so that other person can count the cost. Now, and I said this in the last podcast, everything society, tells us is, we know it's backwards according to the scriptures and all that stuff. But again, people coming into the church, people don't think biblically right away. It takes time. It takes God's providence to work things out in their life. It takes a lifetime sometimes to change some of our character issues that we have. But would you say, or let me ask you just point blank, what kind of a man, being a single 25-year-old woman, what kind of a man are you looking for?
Well, a God-fearing man that's masculine, so protective, providing.
Yep.
Also generous and has very strong integrity.
Okay. All right. So did you hear that? So again, what toxic men would say to that is, oh, she's, providing money. What's that mean? How much? You know what I mean?
Well,
how much? What's that mean? Is she a gold digger? Because that's what we hear.
Well,
that's all we hear, stupid stuff like that. But biblically speaking, yes, you can. Biblically speaking, no, guys, you got to work. You got to make money. And it's not wrong for a woman to ask those questions. How much you going to make? What's your plan? Do you want to make $15 an hour for the rest of your life? Because that's not going to work for me. It's okay to say those things. And a woman is not wrong for asking those questions, nor should she feel uncomfortable asking those questions. But again, we're ingrained in our culture. Little boys, little girls are brought up in the school systems and everything else to say, what are you going to do for a living? What are you going to do for a living? Well, you know what? I want to be happy being a carriage pusher at Market Basket. That's what I'm called to do. And then, you know what? I want to be one of the tellers, and that's what I'm happy doing. Well, no. It's okay to say, what are your goals? What's your plan? What's your future? How are you going to take care of me? No, I don't want to live in this part of the state. It's okay to say that, ladies. And guys, it's not okay for you to say, you know what? Well, I'm not going to do that. That's why you get these things out of the way before you get too far. Ladies are allowed to ask these questions. That is not gold digging. That is not wrong. That's what men are called to do. You were going to say.
I agree, 100%.
Yep.
But I think this question's for you.
Yep.
Just to clear it out. What is providing in the sense of, like, now we're talking white picket fence, Mercedes in the driveway, golden retriever running around. Are we chasing the American dream here? Is that what we're providing? Or are we providing, I mean, obviously nobody wants to just survive, but biblically standing, what is a man called to provide?
Okay. Well, again, if you want some examples, biblical examples, before they even got married in the Old Testament, the guy had a house, and they usually built it onto the addition of their home. You know what I mean? That's usually how it went. So before they were even married, that stuff was prepared. How do I bring this in today's day and age, today's vernacular? I would say, ladies, you know what? You sometimes you ladies, you fall in love so fast because he might be good looking and talks good and maybe even has a little money, but he still lives home with mom and he's 31 years old and he'd rather drive a flashy car than get himself an apartment or a house. These are all red flags. When you said red flags or green flags, these are things that you need to watch for. These are things that we need to see. Men are called to be providers and protectors. So again, what does that mean? Does that mean, again, is she wrong to say, well, you know what? I'm not called to be a missionary to Roxbury. You know, she could say that.
Yeah.
Maybe he is. Maybe it's like God's called me. He wants me to get a job right in Roxbury and minister in the inner city. That needs to be talked about.
Okay.
Because she might not feel like, well, I didn't sign up for that. I signed up because I like you, but I want to live in the suburbs somewhere. You know what I mean? All that stuff is okay. So the level of provision is different for every family. You know what I mean? Can women go to extremes? Well, I want enough to get my nails done every day. I want enough to get my hair done. I want this, I want that. I think as a guy, you should want to give your wife that, but there's a balance to all that stuff. But all those things need to be discussed. And it's not toxic if a guy says, no, I can't provide a house for you in the suburbs making $68,000 a year. I can't provide, I can only provide I'm thinking of a crappy, like a cheap car, I don't know.
Prius?
A Prius. I can only provide a Prius.
It's great for the economy.
A Prius in a 2-bedroom apartment. That's what I can provide. And again, then she's got to make her call. Okay, I'm okay with that. You know, or no, I'm not. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I guess it would be different for every couple.
It would be different.
Yes.
So what about the guy that's in Roxbury? Is he providing, or does he just have to find somebody who that level of providing is enough for them?
Well, yes. If that's where he wants to live his life, then he would obviously have to find a good Christian girl that's okay with living there with him and following him there. You know what I mean? And again, listen, we all have hopes and goals. We all should have those things, and we should set the bar pretty high. All right, shoot for the stars, you hit the moon, kind of thing. All right, but at the same time, there needs to be realistic expectations for the person that you might marry. And if you recognize toxic behavior, and if you think that it's toxic for her to say, well, I want you to provide this, I want this, and I want that, then you don't go any further in that relationship. Right. Things get stopped, and they should be shut off before they go there. And the same thing, him to her. Well, I don't like you dressing up and going out with your friends twice a week. I don't want that. Now, you feel like you're oppressing me. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's his way to protect you. Do you know what I mean? All these things need to be discussed before people go down this path to getting to know one another. or else things come up, or the phrase that start getting thrown out there, oh, it didn't work out because he was toxic. It didn't work out because she was a gold digger. Well, maybe not. Maybe she had expectations that weren't talked about. And then once you found out about them, you know you couldn't meet them, and vice versa. So it depends on the relationship, so to speak. But in looking for a man, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Women really aren't still looking for weaklings, right?
No,
They're not looking
100%.
for passive weaklings. They want men to be able to take control and get stuff done, right?
Yeah,
You know?
100%.
Yeah. And again, so with me and my wife, that's what she says, because we've been married 27 years, been together for 33 years, and she says the one thing she loves about me is that no matter what's going on, no
There's
matter
only
how
one
hard
thing?
it's getting, one of the things she loves, besides my unbelievably good looks. That was a joke. All right, listen. The one thing she loves is that no matter what, I'm gonna keep the ball rolling. No matter what, I'm not gonna cave. I'm gonna get up and go to work the next day. If we can't pay the bills, I'm gonna get another job, whatever it takes. Guys, if you're a guy that's works the minimum, goes home and gets on the Xbox all night long, and then you whine and complain and this and that. I'm hurt, my back, my this, my that. Again, you can whine and complain, but you better still get up and go to work the next day. I say you're being weak. You're being weak. You know, I say that's toxic behavior. That's passive toxic behavior, to not do what the Bible has called us to do. You know, and I think all these things need to be discussed in our relationship seeking, or else people are setting themselves up for disappointment. So that's what I think.
I have a couple more questions.
Yeah, go ahead, fire away.
From a woman's perspective, I'd love to know. So, men are men, women are women. We both get mad. One of the things in toxic masculinity is, as soon as a guy can't get too mad. Seems like a woman can. A woman can raise her voice a little bit, but if a man does it, whoa, you're being aggressive. You know, that's what I've seen.
And then women will try to needle as much as they
Yeah.
can, so he does raise his voice so they can win the argument.
Yeah. So, but I heard you say this in the last podcast, and it was awesome. You said, you've noticed if a woman comes at a man like a man, then he's gonna get a man response. And we're not talking physical by any means, but men get a little worked up.
Yeah.
And women do too. Now, is that toxic in your eyes?
I think that's having emotions, but I think at the end of the day, if you believe in the Lord gives you a spirit of love, power, and self-control. So I think masculine men, they have anger, but the Bible also says, be angry, but sin not. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. And, to hone it in if you can. And, of course, the same applies to women. There's no gender.
So it goes both ways. You're saying
Goes
it's just
both ways.
toxic behavior. It's not only toxic when the man does it.
Well, the man, if he's angry, depending on his type of anger, he could get physical.
The woman could get too.
The woman could get physical, but our blows don't hit as hard as the men.
Yeah.
So
Let's
it's
just keep
okay.
it real.
Yeah, it's women.
So it's
get,
okay.
Yeah, but if women
Yeah.
getting, but it's not,
I mean, we don't care. Obviously, we don't care.
because when
But
guys get
it's
loud,
cutting
no
it.
matter what, it's scary.
It is.
Yeah.
It's scary.
It's like a roar. It's like a lion roar
Yes.
a little bit.
Yeah, if a woman gets loud, like, we laugh. You know.
Yeah.
So
Like
part
Larissa
of-
tried to punch me out a few times, and I laughed.
I guess what I'm leading to is part of being a man would be taking those double standards and owning them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And again, what we see out there today, as we use the terms of toxic masculinity and gold digging, I think if we're gonna think biblically, a woman has the right. Because think about what a woman has to do. She has to give up her whole life for a guy, even if she has a career. She still has to put that on pause to gain 60 pounds, sometimes more, to have a baby. Then she has to give her body away for another baby and to be a family. Then if she is asked to be a stay-at-home mom, then she has to put all her trust in this man that he's not going to, lack of a better term, screw her over. Do you know what I'm saying? She has to think about what she has to do. And then what has history showed us? How many single dads are out there compared to single moms? Not many. Maybe 1 out of 100. There's 99 single moms to 1 single dad. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the dads leave. So think about what women are asked to do. So it's not gold digging, like I said, to say, how are you going to provide for me? What are you going to do? Where are we going to live? Are you going to have some kind of savings for us if you die? You know what I mean? That's okay. Are you going to get life insurance? And you say, well, people in the rest of the world don't have life insurance. Okay, this isn't the rest of the world. This is where we live right here. So that's what I told my wife years ago. I'm following Jesus. She's following me along and all these things, walking by faith. We got ahead in our early 30s. We owned a home, had a ton of equity. The market crashed. We had no equity. We had $0. She's following me around. Now she's got 4 kids, 1 in her belly. All right? I'm 38 years old. And I say, and I go to God. I'm like, God, I sold the house. I mean, but I can't die and leave this woman with 4 kids, 4 small children, and 1 in her belly. I said, just give me enough to have life insurance. So at least she has something. We need to think that way as men. That's what men do. When I hear men say all the time, she needs to make as much as me, she needs to do as much as me. Well, she's going to do as much as you, but in other things. You want to hear something funny? This is funny. All right, just personal stuff, and this is why people come to Great Rock Church, because I actually tell them stuff, and they think I'm crazy. But they can see, they can identify with it. I really didn't know what it was to take care of kids all day. You just think, I'm working, I'm making the money. Look at the life I gave her to stay home and take care of kids all day. See, this is toxic, guys, but I didn't realize it till later on in life. And I'm thinking, like, I'm the man. I'm going to work all day, 5 in the morning till midnight, trying to get a church off the ground, plus being in retail management and everything else I was doing, construction. And literally, she had small children running around, 3 in diapers at the same time. And I would come home, and I would say, well, how come that didn't get done? How come that didn't get done? How come that didn't get done? And I thought it was okay for me to do that. Guys, we have no idea what the role of a woman is and the role of a man is. We could never do it unless we get in their shoes, which we can't, and they can never get in our shoes. You know what I used to do? This is the funny part. I used to make little checklist on the refrigerator.
No way.
Would you divorce me? Forgive me. But she put up with me for all the, and then, do you know when I finally realized how much of a jerk and toxic that was?
When you have to do it.
No, yes. When COVID hit, only 5 years ago. My kids are almost grown at that time. They were at least in their mid-teens, some of them. Because now they forced us to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, honey, I'll show you. I'll take care of all this stuff. No, there's no more kids in diapers.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I cooked the meals. I did all the stuff. I organized the kitchen, this and that. You know what I didn't realize till after 3 days? Listen to this. This is where it's funny.
That was just the kitchen?
Yes. Yes. She goes, Matt, this is really good. You got the kitchen perfect. But you realize there's the laundry and then the homeschooling that I asked her to do. And I'm like, I was winded by noontime. This is what I mean. But you know why? I wasn't good at it because it's not my role. It's not my role. And it was toxic, guys. That's toxic masculinity. For me to think that I'm doing more than her because she's doing what I asked her to do, to be a stay-at-home mom. Guys, that's toxic. And I had to go to God and repent. I had to go to her and say, I'm sorry, all these years I actually thought that I was doing more than you. I'm like, you do way more than me. You do way more than me. Remember I said to you last time, how many guys are out there that actually, let's say both parents have to work. How many guys are out there that work all day, come home, get the kids ready for soccer, then get them changed, have the meals ready, do homework with them, right? Make sure they're all showered up for bed. Moms do all that. They work and do that. You know what guys do? They go to work, they go home, and maybe they'll take the kid to baseball practice and sit in the car on their phone for a while. So Guys, it's toxic thinking even in our marital relationships when we start comparing what we think we're doing to what they're doing. That's the stuff you leave to God. God, I have a role to provide and protect. She has a role, if it's the most biblical model, to be a nurturer and a homemaker. If you can do that, you should shoot for that. That's the best biblical model. But that's toxic thinking. But I didn't know it. And then from a woman's perspective, she could probably get toxic in that too if she says, well, you know what? I only want to have one kid. I want to send them off to daycare all day because I do want to play. What's that new sport they play? It look kind of like tennis.
Pickleball.
Pickleball. I want to play
That's
pickle.
old.
Is it? I don't know. It's weird to me, but sorry if you pay. Now, I want to go play pickleball with my girlfriends. Then I want to get my nails done. Then I want to have coffee. See, that's toxic behavior also. But we need to just watch out for this stuff. So, you know, we're trying to make it simple for you, and the simplest way to do things is try to align yourself with God's word, and don't judge the other person. Do you have anything you want to add? Anything you think I'm missing?
So what you're saying is, when you hear the term "good manager of her home," that's something that you feel like women are called to be, right?
Yeah, I think Titus 2 says that also.
And you don't,
Keepers of the home.
and you don't think it's toxic for a man to want that from you.
No, because that's your preference. That's a man's preference. Like, I would prefer my man to be a provider. Is that toxic for me? No, it's my preference.
You think it's the way it should be?
Personally, in a perfect world, yeah.
Yes.
But
It's good that you said that in a perfect world.
Yeah,
Because
that's smart.
and this is going to go mostly to church people. We hope unbelievers watch this too. But, you know what Larissa says all the time, and she quoted the verses? She talks about all the time that so often women want to learn these Bible studies and all that stuff, and they can, they should, they do all that stuff. But it says the more seasoned women are supposed to teach the younger women what? To be theologians? No, it's okay. No, ladies need to know their Bibles too, but to be what? Titus 2. To be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. So when you hear that in church, and I get accused of that all the time at the church, like, this is a real male-centric church. It's male-centric. And I'm like, I know what goes on behind the scenes, and sadly, even though we preach the male model and the male needs to be a provider and a protector and all those things, and they need to suck it up and work harder, all that, women still outserve us at Great Rock Church.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when we hear that stuff, right, and when people that come in hear that stuff, well, what do you mean teach the women to be keepers at home? It doesn't even go over well in Christian circles. It doesn't even go over well in Christian circles. I don't know if you've dealt with any of that at the church or not, but I hear it all the time. But that's what godliness is. Godliness is before a lost and dying world that tells us, think about the world we live in. That tells us a little boy, if he wants to be a little girl, that's okay. A little boy, if she wants to be a little girl, if she wants to be a little boy, that's okay, and vice versa. And the world says that. Shouldn't the church be different? Shouldn't the church say, no, it's okay to raise strong men that are going to die for their women and their families, that are going to lay down their lives, that are going to suck it up, that they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure their family gets ahead. And isn't it okay to teach our girls it's okay to be soft. It's okay to trust a man. That's the hard part. To trust a man that you're seeing is meeting some biblical qualifications of manhood and is striving to continue to meet those standards. You know what I mean? And that's where it's hard, guys. And I say this all the time. I'm like, guys, you need to make yourself marriage material. And women, well, you should be, if you don't have the gift of singleness both ways, women should be seeking to be wife material. That's what we're called to be. That's what we're called to do. There's nothing toxic about that. People say all the time, oh, the patriarchy's bad. The patriarchy means it was like male-centric leadership in the Old Testament. That hasn't gone away in the New Testament. Women still have babies, as far as I know, right? Women give up their lives and their bodies to follow a guy around that's supposed to be able to take care of them. None of that is toxic. That's how it's supposed to be. Any church that's teaching something different than that, I believe that's toxic. You're going down the wrong path. You're not teaching what the Word of God says. Anything else?
I think that was great.
You sure you don't have anything else you want to hit? Any questions for me?
I don't think so, no.
All right. All right. We're doing the best we can to make it simple for you. I'm sure if you watch this, other things will come up. Feel free to fire in on the comment section and all that stuff, and we'll do the best we can to follow up. But listen, when you're biblical and you think biblically and you do things biblically, it doesn't mean that that perfection is going to happen. Ladies, it doesn't mean that you're going to find a guy that's the perfect provider and the perfect protector and that knows when to be hard and protective and knows when to be soft with his woman all the time. Not going to happen until we meet Jesus, all right? Not going to happen. But at the same time, when you do things biblically and you think biblically and you're looking for people to get into a relationship with that are doing things biblically, chances are that you're going to be more successful in your walks with God together because you know what to look for in a biblical man and in a biblical woman. And ask these questions from Jump Street. Look for those red flags, ladies and men. Look for the green flags. Look for those things. God will provide spouses for you, not perfect ones, but ones that are doing what they can to meet the biblical qualification for manhood and for womanhood. And there's nothing toxic about that. I taught my sons to be the toughest men they could possibly be. I taught my sons to be the best. And I taught my sons the most important thing you can do is find a woman that loves Jesus Christ. And I asked them to do it at a young age. And so far, they're doing that. And I actually wasn't straight Old Testament style. You know what I mean? We didn't like arrange the marriage. But I did go behind the scenes with Larissa when I saw some of the young ladies they were interested in. And we talked to the parents. And we said, what do you think? Now again, nothing's perfect. They all have their problems. But we wanted to see if they were looking for people that were going to think biblically. And so far, they're doing that. I pray that for all my kids. I pray that for all of you. Last but not least, and I do want to hit these topics, and I told you, this is the only thing I told her I was going to talk about. How do you feel about women that have been taught to pursue their careers first and then find a husband?
Well, I think depending on the household that you grew up in, especially like in my situation, I grew up in an immigrant household, and my grandfather always taught us like to get our education and to make sure that we were all set so we could provide for ourselves no matter what, because God forbid something happens to your future husband or, you're left in a position where you have to work for yourself or make some sort of income. And so I think a lot of women were raised that way. And I think that a lot of women, like career women, older than me, I think some of them are actually a little bit discouraged because they wish that they could go back and, actually have cultivate a relationship at a younger age. But I think it just depends on the family that you grew up with, and like the culture behind it. I grew up not to trust anybody, not to trust any man, so make sure that, I'm all set with work, to have a job to be provided for. But best case scenario, again, I think it also depends on the type of men that are around you. Like, I can count on my hand the men that I know who actually want to be husbands and providers. So not many. And I think some of them are actually even happy being stay-at-home husbands and having their wives work. So contrary, maybe it's not like that in the church, but in the real world, especially in the Northeast area, a lot of men, they don't want to, take that role as a husband.
Yeah. But guys, if they're in that scenario, that's toxic behavior. You should say, okay, Yeah, maybe I was a little bit more of a screw up. That's why I don't make as much now. That's why I'm a little more lazy now. But over time, I want to do the most I can to lessen the burden on her with being outside the home. And I can get outside the home more so she could see her children more. You need to do that stuff. But do you find it harder, maybe for yourself or for some women that were raised the way you were, to make sure you could take care of yourself, make sure you're educated to take care of yourself? Do you think you find it harder now as you're looking for somebody?
I think definitely, because my mindset is kind of similar to yours, like work harder. Like for me, I always carried that mindset. Even, when I was in school full time, I was working 2 jobs to pay for college. So for me, I didn't really complain about it. I just said I saw there was something that I had to do, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day, like, I don't mind working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So
Mhm.
if I don't mind doing that as a woman, why are, men complaining to do that?
Yeah.
Just do it.
See, what she's really saying is, sadly enough,
Yeah.
there's not many biblically minded men out there. They would rather compromise than go to girly churches that will tell them, hey, that's okay to be that way. That's okay. We're not going to do that at Great Rock Church. We're going to tell you the truth. Because, again, God's way is the best way. It's the safe way. Listen, you know it's God's will when it's harder at the beginning, then over time it gets easier. You know you're out of the will of God usually when things are so easy at the beginning, and then you know what happens? It gets harder. So make it hard now. Do things God's way. Trust His word. Change some things in your life. Get rid of the toxic behavior so you can start to think biblically. She just admitted that it may be harder for her to find somebody because of her mindset that she has, and because there's not many guys out there that are thinking the way she thinks. You got to work 60 hours, do it. 70 hours, do it. 80 hours, do it. That's how guys need to be thinking. So, I hope we made it simple for you. Again, you want it real simple? Just read Titus 2, read Ephesians 5, read 1 Peter 3, and all the examples in the Old Testament. God lays it down pretty simple for us, what biblical manhood is, what biblical womanhood is, what toxic masculinity is, and what being a feminist is. He lays it down for us. He tells us. Let's think biblically. Let's not accuse people of men of being toxic, of having toxic masculinity when they're just being biblical. And let's not accuse women of being gold diggers when they're just looking for somebody biblical. That's what we need to do. So I hope we made it simple for you. I gave you the passages for homework if you want to look them up. Thank you guys for being alongside today. Pray that God blesses this podcast and it gets out there so people can hear the truth of God's word. God bless you guys.